Um, my name is Tiommi Luckett, and I want to welcome you all to Transgender and Gender Diverse Allyship in HIV Spaces. Like I said, my name is Tiommi Luckett. On the panel with me today, my co-presenter is Octavia Lewis. Unfortunately, Angela wasn't able to join us today. We are praying that she actually doesn't have the flu or any flu-like symptoms, but that is what she said to me.
Hey, I'm so sorry to interrupt. We haven't been assigned as interpreters, so I just don't want you to speak and us not be able to translate. So if we could please be assigned as an interpreter.
Okay. Cindy, are you still here?
Yes, I am here.
Okay.
It was sent out. Let's see. I'm going to update it. Okay. How's that?
So you're turning on the interpretation. Now you have to assign Stephanie and myself as interpreters. So the interpretation is on, but no one has been assigned to be an interpreter.
Even though you send it out, it still makes you come in and do this again. Is it just you and Stephanie? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. It's just me and Stephanie.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. So who's speaking? Who's the other one?
So in our names, it says SPA and
Oh, got it. I got it. I can't read evidently. Okay. Thank you all for your patience. Apologize for the tech glitches and update. Are you good to go now?
Are we good?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, okay.
Okay. All right. Well, transgender and gender diverse allyship in HIV spaces. This meeting is being recorded. We will turn off the recording and taking questions at the end of our presentation. This is meeting mode on Zoom, so you can mute and unmute yourself. And we ask that as we're presenting that you keep yourself muted.
Tiommi, I apologize.
You went out.
No, it was me. Can you unmute? There you go. I apologize. I clicked on the wrong thing.
Okay.
Okay.
So my name is Tiommi Luckett. I am the PWN Communication and Training Assistant. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm coming to you from Little Rock, Arkansas. And I'll pass it to Octavia.
Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary people. My name is Octavia Lewis, and my pronouns are she and her, and I'm hailing from the big city of New York. Also, if you hear a little humming in the background, please do not be alarmed. It is hot in New York, and that is my air condition.
Okay, so we're going to go over the goals first. By the end of this, we hope that participants will be better able to identify the disproportionate impact of HIV within trans and gender diverse communities, be able to make the connection between being trans or gender diverse and the heightened criminalization upon trans and gender diverse people living with HIV. Then we're going to develop a shared understanding of some trans and gender diverse terminology, followed by understanding why pronouns matter, before we get to address how to meaningfully involve trans and gender diverse people living with HIV in HIV decriminalization advocacy, before we ask for you all to commit to informed and active allyship. And I'm passing it over to Octavia.
Okay, I actually don't see any of the slides up right now.
Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay, there we go. And here we are.
All right, everyone. Again, welcome to our panel today. We are the only national membership body created by and for women, transgender, and gender diverse folks living with HIV. A little brief history is that PWN was founded in 2008 by 28 diverse folks possessing a deep desire to create a unified voice and build collective power. PWN applies a racial and gender justice lens to the HIV epidemic to achieve federal policies grounded in the reality of our lived experience. PWN envisions a world where all women living with HIV can live long, healthy, dignified, and productive lives free from stigma and discrimination. And how do we do that? We do that through building a unity. First, we model body autonomy, which is people having the right to choose what happens and does not happen with their own bodies. Diversity as a strength, meaning trans and cis people have many experiences in common and also have unique experiences. We are all connected through our various intersectionalities, which we will discuss later on. And we do that through unity around, that is around state violence, access to care, attempts to limit sexual health, and reproductive choices, racism as a public health crisis. All women means all women. Marginalized women and girls, that is transgender and gender diverse people, lesbian, bisexual people, sex workers, women and girls with disabilities, women living with HIV, women who use drugs, refugees, migrants, women and girls in conflict zones, detention and humanitarian settings, indigenous women, and women from other racial and ethnic minorities, adolescent girls, and young women. Being trans and living with HIV. Nothing with us without us. HIV, so let's talk about HIV in the TGMB community. So trans women are 49% more likely to be living with HIV. So what does that equate to? That equates roughly to 1 in 3 TGMB people living with HIV reported being forced to have sex. And 1 in 7 transgender women are living with HIV. Let's discuss challenges around health disparities. So we all know less is known about long-term impacts of some care interventions. While research is forthcoming, we all know that more is needed. TGMB people are 8 times more likely to be in serious psychological distress because of the disparities that we face. We also have higher rates of HIV diagnosis, especially in Black transgender women, nearly 1 in 5 of whom are living with HIV. And that equates to roughly 1 in 3 reported using illicit drugs, such as marijuana consumption and other non-medical prescription drug use. So here's some data. So Positively Trans Needs Assessment, and this was an assessment that was done in 3 cities. It was done in Detroit, it was done in the Fort Lauderdale, Miami area, and it was done in the New Orleans, Louisiana area. So when we talk about HIV retention and care, 47% of the respondents reported going months or more without care, without HIV care. And the reason for that is, again, some of us, we all have options and we all choose to do things differently. Again, we talk about bodily autonomy. And a reason why that number is there is because a lot of us would prefer to have our hormonal care before we have our HIV care. And for those of us that are seeking to live in our authentic truth unapologetically, that is important to us because often we will be misgender or we will be hurt because of our gender identity before you know our HIV status. So for many of us, it is important to have the affirming health care that we deserve and that we require. Employment: out of the 155 participants, 90% of African American respondents did not have a full-time gainful employment. And this is even echoed in the employment wage of transgender individuals. And if I'm not mistaken, the national average income for people of transgender experience was less than $11,000 yearly. And all of this information, again, confirms why this is, where we at. Next slide, please. And now we're going to look at a quick 1-minute video from Jada Cardona and Tiommi Luckett.
And I hope it plays. But this is actually from the PWN Care series. I'm sure that some of you who are on the call know that Jada and I interviewed for this, and here we go. So this is just the clip, the teaser of her. I'm not in this, but I'm actually in the video.
Tiommi, I think we're having a little trouble hearing the video.
There must be some type of setting I need to do then. Okay, well, in the interest of time, we're gonna go past that, okay?
Okay. So, some bodies are policed more. And that lends to, again, unstable housing, fewer employment opportunities, heightened criminalization of our bodies, assumed sex worker loitering, condoms as evidence of sex work, and forced HIV tests upon intake. Next slide, please. Where do our intersectionalities meet? Black people are over-incarcerated. That's Black and cis-trans people, along with our gender diverse individuals, and people living with HIV criminalization laws. What does it mean to be an ally/accomplice? Words matter. So a few foundational terms, and I'll only go through a couple for the sake of time. Gender. It is a social construct of characteristics that varies between different cultures and societies. Men and women, boys and girls, and gender assigned at birth, typically assigned male or female based on visual interpretation of anatomy at birth. Next slide, Tiommi. So a couple of key definitions. I am a transgender woman. That means I live as a woman today, but was thought to be male when I was born. Transgender people are people whose gender identity is different from the gender they were thought to be at birth. Non-binary people identify outside of the gender binary, meaning they do not identify with male or female, or they may identify with both. And cisgender is folks that live today as the gender they were thought to be when they were born. Next slide. So what are pronouns and why do they matter? Using someone's correct pronouns is a way to respect them and create an inclusive environment. It is offensive and harassing to guess someone's pronouns if that is not how that person wants to be known or addressed. Actively ignoring someone's pronouns implies the oppressive notion that intersex, transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming people do not or should not exist. Pronouns are important. Please don't joke about yours or someone else's. Being pronoun inclusive can protect someone from physical or emotional violence. And now I will turn it over to the lovely Tiommi.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Octavia. So up now we have the SOGIE astronaut, and that stands for the sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. And so what we want you to understand is that, first of all, sexual orientation is completely different from gender identity and gender expression. So if we're looking at the astronaut and the symbols, I'm going to point. So here we have this symbol that is the sex assigned at birth. And that means you were given either female, male, and today intersex, right? Your gender identity is this brain picture here. That's how you picture yourself, right? And so on that spectrum, we have agender, gender fluid, NB, androgyny, two-spirit, genderqueer, but also a woman, man, or another, right? That's how we feel we are on the inside. And so our gender expression are these diamonds, sparkles. That's how we appear to everyone else, right? And so that could be feminine, masculine, or androgynous. That's how people will receive us, and like by our manner of dress, right? So the pronouns are who we say we are. We choose these. So you have some examples of pronouns down here in this box, right? Okay, and then the heart, this is the attraction part. It is different from everything else that we've talked about. The heart does not matter. It doesn't care what the what the organs are, right? So you're attracted to people either sexually, romantically, or emotionally. And emotionally is pansexual, right? So we have other terminology down here: asexual, demisexual, bisexual, lesbian, gay, and multiple genders, as well as like who we could be attracted to. We could be attracted to women because of their femininity. We could be attracted to men because of masculinity, right? Or we could be attracted to trans men because of masculinity, or trans women because of femininity, right? So.
And you did a great job, and I'm glad you touched on that, because again, we talk about a galaxy of limitless possibilities. And as we stated early, gender is a social construct. So anyone can be anywhere on the spectrum at any point of time. So again, we ask because we care.
Right. And now we're going to explore one example of just like how the possibilities are limitless. Look at Alex. In this first example, Alex was identified female at birth. Gender identity is a woman. Gender expression is androgynous, right? So it may appear, because of societal standards, as this person may appear masculine. So the androgynous, right? But Alex uses she, her, and her pronouns and is attracted to multiple genders. That's where the sexuality comes into play, and considers herself cisgender, right? And I'm not, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through all of them, but just to show you how our identities, each one of us has a complex identity, right? And that's within us to define, and for no one else to define for us. So keeping in with the conversation of what it means to be an ally, we need you to know that violence is real upon trans and gender diverse people. And it shows up in different ways, but it's primarily caused because we're misgendered, or in public, we're introduced as people other than who we say we are. Myself, when my family introduces me to their friends, they introduce me to them as their brother, right? So pronouns matter. They matter, because what they don't realize is that they're putting me at risk for physical harm. That is this top picture here on the left, with these 4 feminine presenting pictures with bullets on targets on the sides of their faces, right? And so oftentimes we in the trans community are forced to have sex. We saw a slide, Octavia talked about it. And so sometimes, you know, people are trying to persuade us to be the way that they want us to be, but violence is still violence, and no still means no. So then, like in structural violence, here you have the icon in the bottom left-hand corner. You see like the court systems, the military, the clergy, all of these have been attacks from, you know, these structures against trans bodies. And so also like the violence just from simply trying to make a living wage, because we often are not given the opportunities for employment, right? So we're also demanding that people end violence against sex workers, because oftentimes that's like the only source of employment for trans and gender diverse people because of people's biases and prejudices. And a lot of people think that they are well intending when they say stuff like this. But these are microaggressions. Just put it in the context of like being Black. Oh my God, you speak so well for a Black person. Like, you know, or you're not like other Black people. Then how many Black people do you know? These are all microaggressions, right? Or you're so beautiful for a trans girl. I've heard that. I've also heard you will never be a real woman. Well, real according to who? And when you have like people who are gender diverse, such as this, I think their name is Jacob. So when are you going to really transition? Who's to say that Jacob's transition is not finished already, right? Because what we've said before in this presentation is that there are levels to transitioning, and so being trans is not a monolith. It's not going to look the way that you want it to look. And so you can't put us all into one box. But please stay away from all of these microaggressions. And if you think that it's offensive, chances are it probably is. So, but what does it actually mean to be meaningfully include people of the trans and gender diverse communities? Well, we talk about MIPA. And MIPA is the meaningful involvement of people with HIV. But we do know what works. What works is organizations being able to have a willingness for change, right? Because what doesn't work is that rigid organizational structure. I could give examples, but in the interest of time, I won't. What does work is the increased representation, including at the executive level. I'm just so proud of PWN, you know, because they modeled this. They modeled this like with Black leadership and elevating Black leadership, right? So we have this co-director model now with Nana and Vanita as co-directors, right? So they share the responsibilities. And so that is PWN speaking to their belief in the leadership of Black women. And so we know that that works. It has been well received by so many other organizations. People are coming to us wanting to know, like, how did we do this? And what did we do to get to this point? So that is what actually works, right? So clear leadership development plans for transgender diverse people living with HIV, trans and gender diverse people living with HIV as partners, no tokenization, we'll talk about that in just a second, and centering the most impacted populations in the response. And so that is elevating racial justice, that is elevating trans justice, right? In the HIV response, because what doesn't work is gaslighting trans and gender non-binary people. And what is gaslighting? For those who don't know, gaslighting is you knowing that you are messing with someone mentally, but making them believe that you're not and that they're crazy, or that their idea, it's them, not you, right? If you haven't done it, I'm sure that you have at one point in your life felt like, now I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about. You've had an argument and they were trying to insist that it was you, not them. That's gaslighting. So keeping on with the conversation of MIPA, no tokenization. What do we mean by tokenization? We mean like not just having trans and gender diverse people sitting at the table just to check them off, like they were there, right? Meaningful involvement of the trans community was the meeting that Positively Trans and other members of the trans community had with HRSA and ONAP, and in Washington, D.C., and the things that came out of that, because we are the subject matter experts. They didn't have the data. We had the data. We provided the data. And why do we provide data? Because data equals funding. And we need a funding stream that is specifically for trans and gender diverse individuals, that is separate from men who have sex with men, because that is not how trans women identify. Neither is trans men identifying as women who have sex with women, right? So we need documentation that supports gender expansive options. Sometimes, other times in the presentation, we've had a gender expansive word cloud. Facebook gives you like 64 options to choose for your own gender now. And if Facebook can do it, then I'm sure that everybody else can catch up. But I will not read all of what's on the slide. And so in conclusion, we have a few don'ts and do's. Never refer to a trans or gender non-binary person with pronouns or gender terms like sir or ma'am. It's simple. Ask, how may I address you? He, she as one word, and it, unacceptable. Use the correct pronouns that were given. Never ask a trans or a gender non-binary person what their real name is. Just respectfully ask what their name is. And if you're an organization that has like documentation that you need from them, ask them their name. And then provide an option for like if their name doesn't match their documentation, right? But if you have that option for them to identify themselves as who they say they are, I promise you, you will go a long way. Transgendered, a transgender, tranny, or transvestite, don't use those. You can shorten transgender by using trans, or any other word that a trans or gender non-binary person uses for themselves. And those you will see in a handout from PWN. It is the first language, people first language and gender inclusive language fact sheet that will be one of the resources linked in this presentation. And for sure, don't talk about real women or real men, because gender is complicated. And more often than not, when you're talking about real women to trans women, you're making the argument that trans women can't carry a baby, right? Can't give birth. Well, some cisgender women can't give birth. And, you know, they have really hard problems like even conceiving. So that doesn't diminish from their womanhood simply because they've never been pregnant, they can't carry a baby to term, or because they choose never to have children, right? So that reverts back to us meaning that all women, it means all women in their choices and what they decide to do with their body. And now we ask that you will support the Trans Agenda for Liberation. This came out of the Transgender Law Center. And so there are 5 pillars of the Trans Agenda for Liberation. 1 being Black trans women and Black trans femmes leading and living fiercely.
And 2, we beloved home.
Right. 3, intergenerational connection and lifelong care.
4, defining ourselves.
And 5, having the freedom to thrive.
So our call to action. Commit to sharing your pronouns and using others. Support trans and gender diverse community when people aren't willing to use chosen names. Look at your agency forms to be as inclusive as possible. Moving beyond simple male and female options just won't cut it anymore. Advocate for gender inclusive rights and keep learning.
So if you have any questions, we have our contact information here for you. And Kelly, you can also put it in the chat box. I can't see the chat box, you guys. I'm sharing my screen. And so our resources were the Positively Trans 2018 Needs Assessment. PWN Cares, Keeping It Real, Being Trans and Living with HIV can be found on the PWN Cares, the PWN website under PWN Cares. And then the Trans Agenda for Liberation can be found on the Transgender Law Center website. That slide that defined women, we wanted to make sure that you guys understood that, you know, like this was in the context of COVID-19 pandemic, right? So as recent as like 2020, UNA still felt it necessary to define what we meant when we were talking about all women. And so that's why you got that long list of people that the UNAs consider women, right? And lastly, we have that people first language and the trans and gender diverse inclusive language fact sheet. If it hasn't been there already, if you go to the PWN exhibitor booth, then you will see the PDF version that you can download and view at a later time. So thank you all. That was our presentation. Now, if I can figure out how to get back to you all. Okay. So, 4 minutes. And we started late. So,
Yeah. And we
any
wasn't trying
questions?
to rush. We wasn't trying to give y'all the
Right.
brief version, but we wanted to give you the whole meat and potatoes. And I'm
Yes.
glad we actually got through kind of early, because we would like to have an open, honest dialogue, and we are here to filter questions.
Now that I can see the chat.
Okay, am I the only one that just sees a black screen?
I see your name up there.
Yeah, I'm not seeing an image, but I think it's my computer, so I don't know.
Okay. So we got through the entire presentation. Are there any questions?
And Tori brought up a good comment in the chat about the name change, is that it isn't just specific for trans people, that it applies to everyone. Folks change their name after marriage and divorce also.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I know Deirdre. I am still like, okay, Deirdre's hand is raised. Do we have to promote you or you can come off mute?
I think I could come off mute, but I just wanted to lift that and number one, say thank you to you both for always being honest. And even at times when folks like me who are learning and correcting us when it's necessary, not even when it's necessary, it's always necessary. And I always learn so much from you all. And as you saw in the chat, I'm not invited to all the cookouts because a sister girl stand up for her cousin, and very, very proud of my cousin for everything that she is doing here in the area. But it burns my grits for those of us in the South when my other cousins call her by her other name, and that I've cussed them out on more than enough occasions. And then also to have you all to be in the presence of just helping me and lifting me up as a parent of a non-binary individual. And it's been very helpful to reach out and have you all as mothers for them as well, to support them as they're going through. And then as a parent, helping me to also help educate my family more and more. So thank you for continuing to make sure that we're learning and being appropriate. I love you both from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.
Thank
I love
you,
you
love.
too.
But I also want us to be like transparent and have the discussion that language is forever evolving.
Mm-hmm.
When I came out as trans, the only thing that I knew of was to be, binary. And I still identify as binary. And it also has taught me from being in spaces with my, non-binary siblings, is that it is not a competition, that we are all, fighting for our liberation. And what I have learned through this struggle is that all our liberation are entwined with one another. Especially that's where our intersectionalities come into play. And I think that once we begin to have those honest dialogues and unlearn and unpack a lot of stuff, even, within ourselves, because I'm still learning. So I make it a practice of mine, to be gentle and to be kind with myself, and also bestow that same amount of gentleness onto people, especially when they're coming from a place of trying to learn and they are being as humble as they can be.
And
Sorry,
there
I'm over here getting
actually,
something for people.
There are a couple of 2 questions in the chat box as well.
Okay, I am pasting the link to the the trans and gender diverse inclusive language fact sheet. And let me read the questions. I think I just answered one. Do you know of support groups for non-binary elders? I have found local groups that are attracting mainly folks in their teens and 20s. I love being with them, but elders have some unique challenges that deserve focus. That is true. And so I myself am basically alone here in Little Rock. So if Octavia knows of any, I'll allow her to speak, but I can't say that I know of any. I just know that I have communication with a good amount of trans elders when I need some guidance and steering. So, but I know that doesn't answer your question.
No, it doesn't. And again, like I said, I am learning as well, but I am willing to do some lifting. I will put my email address in, and please feel free to contact me, and I will definitely put you in contact with some individuals I know here in New York.
Yeah. Let me see, did I miss anybody?
Hey, Tiommi. This is
Hello.
Crystal.
Hey, Crystal.
Hey, so I put a question in the chat. This was kind of related to JMO's question. So I know BIPOC TGNC led organizations that sometimes have challenges with getting folks from the trans or gender diverse communities engaged when they create events or create spaces specifically for them. And so what would you say are some ways to better engage those communities?
Okay, I've always said this, to meet people where they are, right? And so that kind of means like going to a venue that is already set up for us so that we're not necessarily painting a target on our people, right? So if we're already congregating somewhere, then see if you can get into that space and have an event for them where versus them coming to you, right? Because to me, that's what grassroots advocacy is. Meeting people where they are, going to where the work is actually needed. And so that it plays out differently. It looks like being at the balls, like when the balls were there, right? So you can do as much as you can in a time when we really shouldn't be around each other, but still let people know that you are there, right? And so when we open back up, yeah, I would say that you go where our people are. You go where you know that the help is needed instead of trying to get them to come to you, because sometimes it's hard just to even go to the doctor. And I'm a person living with HIV. It's kind of hard, like getting to the doctor. Ride share doesn't work. Safety issues come into play when I'm trying to use public transportation. So it's that trauma informed framework where you're looking at the person and like what that person has to go through in order to get there. Right. And sometimes they're painting a target on their back by going out the door. So if they're comfortable to be with their people, then I say that that's where you need to be. You're welcome. I think that was a thank you. I read your list.
I think you got all of the questions, but there's just a lot of love in the chat for y'all in this.
Thank y'all. Thank you. Yeah, we do this work until we don't have to do it, you know, until we get to the point where, you know, y'all understand that this is what we need to do. This is what true sisterhood solidarity is, and you're putting it into action. I was on a panel with Chris Ardina, and she just constantly reminds me that I said, if I'm not in the room, then you need to defend me. You need to defend my people when we're not in the room. And so that's the reason why we're doing this education, because a lot of people in the HIV community don't understand why PWN is putting trans issues like as a part of our even, you know, what is it called? Policy agenda, right? We're really confused by that. And we're like, all women means all women. HIV is a human condition. Trans people are human. So why not? But I don't have anything else. If there are no other questions, I will say that it was good to see my trans siblings in here. I did see y'all come in. Y'all might still be in here. I know one. Saw you when you came up in here, boo. I ain't gonna put you on the spot, but I see you, sis.
What you mean to tell me this is like one of the first panels where we like have not been flooded or bombarded with like questions? And I'm like,
And
I guess
hey,
that means everybody got it. Like, we're
yeah,
good. You can go home now. Like, is that what everybody is saying?
yeah.
And I mean, and that's a good thing. I mean,
Pronouns
you know,
matter.
we have those conversations where it is, you know, cumbersome and it is taxing when you leave. And then we have those conversations where we can honestly tell that people are like struggling to make it happen or to make it work. And we just want everyone to know that, again, like no one is perfect, and intention matter, and that's why we think intent versus impact always matters.
Mhm.
And one of these sayings that I love to say and I love to leave people with, is a saying from my mentor that people do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. So
Mhm.
just because you have people on here with, you know, masters and doctorates, like when you are engaging with our community, we see through all of that. And we know when you genuinely care for us, and we know when you are there for us. And I think that that is why we all have to continue to be accomplices for one another. And as Tiommi said, when we're not in the room, then you're taking up, you know, that charge for us. But you're also making sure that the next time we are in the room.
Mhm.
And that's what we have to do for one another. There shouldn't be any, you know, places or discussions that are had where the people that is most impacted by are not there to address those issues.
We do have a somewhat of a question from Lawrence. I want you to know that this is a learning space. So please ask your question.
Thank you, I will. I have been struggling to figure out how to be a ally to the transgender diverse community when I hear other queer people in particular having strong opinions about pronouns in particular, particularly for the gender non-binary people. There is such vitriol regarding people's use of pronouns that reflect their identity. And I'm like, I don't understand why there's a struggle for people to accept pronouns. And the embarrassing part for me is that I really don't know what I can say differently than that's how that person identifies.
Mhm.
And if that's how they identify, that's what we should respect. But
Mhm.
I feel like that is almost too simplistic for some of the people that I've been recently encountering, and I just don't have language to better argue for and in defense of members of the community that I value and care about.
Yeah, I get that. Um, I talked about therapist about this exact same thing. It reminds me of Deirdre's comment about her not being invited to the cookouts. Well, I'm always invited. They just never want to accept me as I am, right? And so I was like, okay, do I try to make an attempt to make this work with my family, even though I know I'm going to be hella disrespected? And I'm going to try not to lose it, but that's me making them comfortable, and I'm the uncomfortable one. So they're just going to have to sit in their uncomfortability, right? And so if you can't address me by my name and my pronouns, then I can't address you by your name and your pronouns. And that's what my therapist suggested that I do. So why don't you just give them a name? Since my sister finds it so difficult to say Tiommi, she calls me Tone. Nothing like my name, period. And so she's not Lisa. I give her Larry, you know? I mean, like, it is what it is. I mean, if they feel the hurt that they're inflicting, people are 9 times out of 10 able to make better choices in the future. Not to say that I'm going to start a fight, but at the same time, I'm also going to protect my energy.
And just to piggyback off of that, Tiommi, you know, I thank you for being a upstander, because that does take courage, you know, to address what is going on, and that is diffusing the situation for that other person, whether you know it or not. But I'll never forget a situation that happened with me personally. Me and my grandmother was in Walmart, and she called me by my old name, and she was like, "Where he at?" So I turned around and I looked at my grandma, and I was like, "Grandma, I don't know where is he at." And like, she got it in that moment that, okay, I can't be calling out wrong pronouns because A, I'm not gonna answer, but that does put people in danger. Mm-hmm. And you never know what situation or who's around that may have their own ignorance. So I just want to say I applaud you again for being that upstander, for at least having those uncomfortable conversations, because pronouns do matter.
They do matter.
And again, with my family, they just learned to call me my name, and that was easier for them. And that was a way in which we, you know, got through some of our issues, because I was not going to allow myself to be put in situations to be traumatized, you know, constantly. And then I, you know, am the one that's dealing with that. And again, like I say, I applaud you for that, and we need more people to help diffuse situations like that.
Well, I want to say that I do believe that our trainings have been effective from our RISE gender justice trainers, one of whom is my presenter with me today. But yeah, PWN started the RISE program, and we have graduated 8 trainers, 8 trans women of color, to do this work. And so we were actually invited to give this presentation here today by HINAC. And so we've given this presentation somewhat a little longer in other instances, right? And so like people they're getting it. They're getting it. And so we're doing it in a way where it's educational and in a learning environment. And that speaks to like the level of leadership that we have. And so thank you so much, Octavia, for always picking up the charge and answering the phone when I call. And I love you. And thank you all so much. We are down to the last minute. Any other comments or questions? Medina said, "Y'all, did you say y'all ate that?"
No.
Oh no, I know I saw it. Okay, I know I saw it. I was like, who is that speaking to me in my language? Y'all ate that panel. Thank you, boo. Thank you. I did see it. It just wasn't you, Benita, but it wasn't a bad thing, I promise. Yes. Okay, y'all, we did what needed to be done. Thank you so much for joining us. And also, don't forget about open mic night, okay?
Yes.
So yes, open mic night is coming up, and I think in an hour. So yes, see you all there. And there was an actual poem by Sonia Rockwell here in Arkansas who won't be at open mic, but I'll try to find somewhere to put it on Hoover for everybody to read. Yes, 6 p.m. my time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Okay, bye everybody.